So today, I'm going to turn it back over to our attorneys. There is one thing, as you know, we did approve, in fact, I called this meeting to order. We need to do introductions. I'm sorry. Emily, you want to start with introduction and work our way around?
Sure. Good afternoon, Emily Quincy Pesta. Christy Long, City of Charlotte.
Hey, by the way, I've been asked for us to stop saying what body we came from so we become one body. So Christy, maybe that's from.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon. I am Christy Long, your board secretary.
We're going to build this into one, stop doing separation. Let's start with that. Right.
Vice Chairman.
Brad Thomas, Lead Counsel Cats.
Brent Cagle, interim CEO.
David Howard, Chair.
James Katz, Thomas Bradshaw.
Ruben Mack, Board Member.
Clayton Seeley, Board Trustee.
Anthony Lindsay, observing board trustee.
I think it's. There you go.
I'll start Brad Katz Legal.
Yes, ma'am.
We're ready to start.
Okay. And on the phone, Ken, you want to go?
Ken Shore, member.
Can we turn him up at all?
Sure.
Okay. Who else I have on the call? Wyatt. Wyatt Dixon. Go use your
Wyatt's caretaker.
Oh, this is no taker. Hey, Wyatt's no taker. Okay. And then Adam.
Hey y'all.
You gotta introduce yourself, Adam.
Adam Dora Robinson Bradshaw.
And you just joined us.
Over for City Time.
All right, so today we're going to discuss the bylaws just for 1 second. So as you know, we actually voted to approve and recommend the bylaws the way we discussed last week. You got a copy of them in the last day or so. There was only one change to the bylaws, and David, when you talked about seeing that one thing that we actually voted on it, but there was only one thing that changed from the last time we got it after the session. So what was that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We voted on it, the committee voted on it, to recommend it as revised. The discussion around that revision comes up in Article 6, Section C, Clause E, talking about the role of the executive committee vis-a-vis the hiring and performance management selection processes for the CPO. We simply replaced the word lead there with facilitate to verify that that is a more accurate description of what the executive committee is going to be doing. So that's the only change. And again, that was the revision discussed in the room and included in the recommendation.
So we actually voted on that already. So I am asking you guys to consider one more change, and that is the handout that you have. So in talking to a couple of the members that had issue with compensation, I think some of the folks just wanted the option to say, look, I can opt out of getting the salary if for some reason in the future the board voted. They wanted an option to be able to opt out. So that's what this language is. So it's adding one sentence to the end that says, well, half a sentence, provided that no member of the board shall be obligated to accept any such compensation. That would help. And I'll leave it at that. Any questions about this one thing? Yes, ma'am.
Only question is, do we need a motion? Is that what this is, the motion?
Why don't we start with a motion and then we'll do discussion. So yes.
So I'm going to say so moved.
A second.
Second.
It's been properly the second discussion on the additional sentence. Wyatt is joining. Can we have Wyatt? From the committee, any questions about that? If not, I'm carry the motion. Okay. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All same sign. Now that becomes what we recommend to the body, and I am intending on bringing this up on Friday at the retreat. It'll be at the end of the meeting. All right.
Chair, before we
Yes, sir.
move away from the bylaws, may I ask a couple of clarifying questions to our attorney on the proposed draft?
We voted, but only questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, to our attorneys. Only questions. I'm not here to debate the issues any further at this point. I just had a couple of questions. So on this same section, on 2.9, My first question was whether or not, absent a recommendation from an independent advisory committee, is the board barred from taking any action on compensation with this language?
I would say yes, but this language says the board may receive compensation when three things have been satisfied. And if none of those, or if any of those has not been satisfied, then the implication is the board cannot receive compensation. And one of those is recommendation from the independent advisory committee.
Which was my next question about the independent advisory commission. So, this condition that's in here, is subject to the provision in 6.04. The last sentence in 6.04. Which I was confused, and so I just wanted clarification on the legal interpretation of that.
Sure, yeah, that last sentence in section 6.04, which reads none of the power, authority, or responsibility vested in the authority may be delegated or surrendered to any such advisory committee. Again, in section 2.09, what we're talking about is a recommendation from an independent advisory committee. I think one way to think about section 6.04 is saying like an advisory committee cannot by itself mandate compensation for the board, right? They can make a recommendation. That recommendation then needs to be approved by the board. That is the way that those two sections would work together.
But absent that recommendation though, so does that not give that committee some authority over whether or not the board takes action on compensation?
It's just a recommendation, right?
No, that's not my question. I think you understand my question.
Yeah, I would not read it that way, as delegating the authority.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just need to be clear on that. And then on section 2.13, which is the ethics, conflict of interest, and recusals section. My question on that was, do these documents or these requirements also apply to the advisory committees? Are the advisory committees also obligated to adhere to our code of ethics, conflict of interest policy?
Believe that the answer to that would be yes, but of course we can set that out in the conflict of interest policy. If we want to.
Why would we do that? I'm not understanding your question.
Why would we, if it's an advisory committee, whose aegis is only subordinate to the board level, they can do whatever they do, but whatever action they take comes to the full board for actions, right?
Yes.
So whatever concern that someone might raise about that action would be addressed, dealt with up or down, or rejected up or down with the board.
Right. I just asking that question with respect to their conduct, not to necessarily any recommendations, but their conduct in general. Are they obligated to adhere to the same rules of conduct as the full board members are?
I'm gonna try to make sure we all have one conversation. And for every man actually has her hand in there. So
Yes.
did you had the floor? Did you finish your?
No, I do have some other questions, but I just.
To that point, if you.
Well, I want to make sure some of what you are asking, you could just ask the attorney, and we still got to go through bylaws. I mean, get the code of ethics. So is this for the?
I think it's for the edification of the full body.
But
Well, you're joining them because we just.
Mr. Chair, this is that point,
To your point.
anyone engaging with the MPTA, especially in terms of having a committee, independent or not, should be held to the same standards in terms of the code of ethics laws.
Well, we're gonna talk about the code of ethics, but I think he's saying to make sure that it's reflected in the bylaws. Bryce trying to jump in and I'm gonna move us.
Well,
Use the code of ethics.
Are you
You can just ask.
I'm asking a question, but not imply on that.
He's asking a question, I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
He was trying to. Because I mean, my first thought is that we voted on this. Maybe this is not the time to go for the stuff to clarify. Maybe we clarify with the attorneys and anything that's left, we can bring to the full board. That's what I guess I'm saying, Anthony. So on this one, because you're asking clarifying questions, So again, let's put these in buckets. If it's a legal question, if it's an opinion, or if it's a board action, what you're talking about is actually for consideration for board action. And actually, I think that should be put on the table. So let's just ask for a review of that one. Let's not try to solve it right now.
Yeah.
So I think he's right. We should ask the question, what happens with advisory bodies in the code of ethics? Anything else like that? That we just need to put on.
All of mine are what I believe to be for edification of the body, but I will adhere to your directives and deal with it later if you know.
No. What I'm asking you to do is if you will spend time with the attorney to see if they can answer the questions for you.
Yeah.
And then we can bring whatever's left to the full body. I'm not trying to stop that. I just want to make sure we get through this agenda today in the hour that we have, an hour and a half.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that it's important for the full body to have consideration of these questions that I'm asking, not just for me, attorney, to get an answer and then have to bring it back later. That's all I'm saying. So
we have to figure this. Your first one was more about process though. That's if we can narrow it down to the one that just need the decision and they may be able to talk about the process, which is what I'm saying. I'm not telling you not to do it, but let's narrow it down to just one that need board direction. And your first one was really more about process of which the body does next. I'm just trying to separate it so we don't spend time on that, just that. So if you don't mind talking to the attorneys.
I'll be happy to talk to the attorneys. I just want you to know that regardless of what the answer is, these may come up again. So if you prefer to deal with them later, I'm happy to do that. I think it's important that the body has an opportunity to consider these questions for themselves, not just my question, but what the attorney's answer is to the question as well. That's the only reason I'm proposing right now. So and I'm going to wait.
And again, all I'm asking, because I'm not disagreeing with you, but if you will narrow it down to something the board needs to consider, after you talk to the attorneys, you're more than welcome to bring it in. I want to get us I'm trying to get us a conflict of interest to this body next week, so we need to start. All right? So, James, if you will engage him and let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You do it right after this meeting if you're available.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing, which is the discussion on the code of ethics. So we started this conversation last week, and I don't remember where we left off. But James, Frank, you want to add anything before I give it to the attorneys, since you've been kind of helping guide the attorneys and all this stuff?
With respect to the
The code of ethics.
well, it's obviously a matter of great concern with people. I think that we've gotten to a place in terms of the scope of it and the areas, in particular with respect to those folks who are in the real estate business and others who have a particular concern about how they might be able to do their normal work and still be a member of this board. So those issues have been at least on the table and work with. I also say, perfection sometimes is the enemy of the very good. I'd like to think we're close, if not at, very good. So look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
And just technically, so that they're part of the minutes. Wyatt and Peter, will you introduce yourself, please? Just your name, just the fact that you're on the committee. So Peter, you go first.
Peter Pappas, City of Charlotte.
Wyatt Dixon, City of Charlotte.
I'll get to him. And we're gonna stop saying where we're appointed from, because everybody wants us to be one body. So going forward, y'all. But anyway, thank you for joining us. All right, so what we got? So James.
Sure. Thank you for that, Chair Howard. So just to refresh on where we are in the Code of Ethics, you have in your packet the same document, same black line that we were discussing at the most recent meeting. We had at that meeting gone through the concepts around the conflict of interest definition, where we had brought in the standard that a conflict needs to, in order for something to be a conflict, there needs to be a reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable effect on an interest. So that's one standard that we brought in, which is consistent with North Carolina general statutes and with various other codes of authorities around the country that direct, substantial, and readily identifiable effects. The second component of the conflict of interest relates to properties specifically. And we talk about, it's that second sentence in the definition. where conflict of interest shall only exist to the extent any action to be taken by a trustee specifically benefits a property, private business, or enterprise. And we drew that standard from Sound Transit in Seattle, which seemed to be out of the precedents that we reviewed, pretty much the closest to having a specific standard for property, which I think is what we were aiming to solve for here. Chair, you could share something.
Yes, Peter, I'm sorry.
David, could the gentleman speaking identify what page he's on and which one? I think I just received the Code of Ethics, red line here about 2 minutes ago. So just want to try to keep up.
I just emailed him what we were referring to.
Oh, she did say.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So it won't have the bottom number, so refer to the number out of the number.
I'm sorry, we won't have this.
Say page 7 of 12 or.
Okay, we're on page 2 of 11. That one.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. In the red line, page 2 of 11, the definition of conflict of interest is what I was just discussing.
Right.
So, you earlier point, too, you're trying to, bottom.
Well, I think
But I was just going to mention, as we talked about this point and looking at, we were trying to get to was trying to have a, not a fanciful, but a real, private interest that would affect the person's ability to make a fair decision or make an independent decision as opposed to not. And so we're trying to define it in a way that people could have some clarity. So Peter, that's sort of the background of that.
Right. And how
there.
do you define material?
So let's, I think instead of, should we talk about the general principles of kind of indirect and direct? That's what's been, as opposed to going through each piece of this. So there's been a lot of conversation about material and not material. And to be honest, James or Adam, what you found in looking at other policies was what? And then we'll talk about what we have.
Sure. Almost all of the other policies use language that's very similar to what we have here in the conflict of interest definition. They talk about direct benefits, readily identifiable benefits, substantial benefits. Like I said, Sound Transit talks about a specific benefit to a property. None of the other codes that we looked at defined material in any bright line way. They don't say that it's a material benefit if it's, more than X dollars or more than X percent of someone's income or, net worth or anything like that. Instead, it just simply left that it has to be a material benefit. The way that I would then.
So let me jump in there. So, and because Ned is, on one of the officers, I asked them to directly talk to Ned about the concerns because he seemed to be carrying the general concerns for what we heard from the few people that talked about it, that mentioned this. And I'll be honest with you, Peter, the whole idea of trying to define material, is it a half mile? Is it inside of the, is it within the stationary plan? We know that the benefits of this investment go beyond a half mile. It's a mile. Is it it was no way to define material because material is based on your station in life or your income. So where we landed is what you have in your hand. Oh yeah, by the way, what James was trying to say is no other body, city council, DOT, none of the ones we looked at tried to define material. Nobody did. And the more we got off into it, I think Sound had one that talked about a mile.
You're thinking of Art, is that Art? Utah.
Utah had one. But what we're proposing in this one, or what they're proposing, and I agree with it, and Ned agreed to it too last night in general, was the idea of putting in a process to deal with it and not try to define material. So what we're saying is that as opposed to trying to say what it is, We have a recusal process. We have a recusal process. On top of that, now you see language for if a concerned trustee wants to bring it first to the executive committee to get an opinion. Make your computer read. Then that's where you would come. And we were just talking to the attorney about, what should you share and not share because it could be public. So, there's a smaller group that you talk to. If we agree with you that it's not a conflict, then you keep going. And we may report it to the board. There was a process and explain what it was. If you do have one, then we say you do have one and you need to recuse yourself on this issue. And if you disagree, we started talking through a kind of a process of an appeal to the full board. We dealt with it more with, we're suggesting, I guess it's not because it's not the opposite. The attorneys with Ned's input are suggesting a process approach as opposed to trying to materially define a conflict. So I'm sure there's some comments. Did I do a good job on that before I turn to anybody else? What did I miss?
To clarify, the black line that's included in everyone's packet does not include the second part of the process that you just.
Oh, well, thank you. All right, so you don't know anything about it. So I just told you what we were gonna talk about then. Yes, sir, man.
So my only concern is because the board has full transparency, that although we may believe something doesn't appear to be a conflict of interest, that doesn't mean that the public would not see it that way. And I believe that it's important that we go beyond the process and actually have some legal or some concept of material so that we have a criteria to begin and.
So we have a criteria for direct. Direct,
I got that.
we got that one. It's the indirect one that we're talking about.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's his white collar.
But that may be the bigger problem, is what I'm saying.
So I'm sorry, we got a lot going on. Justin joined the meeting. Justin, introduce yourself.
Justin Harlow, Mecklenburg County appointee.
I'll share it with him, y'all. And then Matt just walked in. You introduce yourself. Just
Yep, I was David, trustee. Yeah.
all right. So everybody, so Peter, I'm coming to you.
So
Yes, sir.
in the group that's going to determine whether it's a conflict or not, is the board's attorney part of that group? In other words, do we have a legal review?
You
of
remember Matt actually saying the same thing. You remember Matt said the same thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
have an attorney on the committee, and does the attorney write the statement that says, yes, this is a conflict, or no, it's not?
No attorney on the committee, but James is going to respond.
So.
Wait a minute ago, you said, yes, we have an attorney on the committee.
Not on the committee. You kept going. I was saying have an attorney, whoever our attorney is, general counsel will chime in on the conversation. But they won't.
That's too loose. That's too loose. I mean, if you're going to kick it to a process, have the legal representation on the committee and let them respond on behalf of the board. I mean, y'all are, the committee's not made up of attorneys, but we'll have an attorney that represents the board. So I think if someone's asking for an interpretation, they ought to write and ask for the interpretation, and the legal counsel should respond.
No, we're saying the same thing, Peter. The legal counsel would attend the meeting. You said be on the committee. They wouldn't be a committee member. I thought you were saying be on the committee.
What? Well, okay. I think we might be splitting hairs, but my point is it ought to be a legal interpretation, not a committee interpretation.
At the end of the day, the committee still has to vote whether they agree with the legal interpretation or not, though.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
Why
just on the recusal.
why wouldn't the legal interpretation be the deciding factor?
Because they're advisors. But James and Adam, you want to chime in?
Well,
I would agree.
that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, just to get to the point here, our reputations are on the line, so we're taking the time to write and say, we'd like an interpretation. And I just think the attorney should provide the response on behalf of the board, not the committee. The committee shouldn't be the deciding factor. The attorney's the one who can enforce the code of ethics.
So James is gonna try to respond.
So Peter, the process that we've laid out in the code of ethics would be that an individual trustee who believes that they have a conflict or an appearance of a conflict would submit information to the executive committee for the executive committee's evaluation. The executive committee has the opportunity to consult with counsel to the board if they'd like to do that. That's the second to last paragraph in section 5.1. Even before that, the trustee in question also has the opportunity to consult with counsel to the board. That's the last paragraph, section 5.1. Once the executive committee has received this information from the trustee in question about potential conflict, if it's clear that there is absolutely no conflict, then the executive committee says there's no reasonable basis for establishing a conflict of interest here. You don't have a conflict, and that's the end of that piece of it. And I'll circle back in that in a second. If they determine anything else, that there may be a conflict of interest, then it goes to the board for a vote at the beginning of a meeting where the action item would be called. And it is a board decision ultimately as to whether to recuse somebody on the basis of the conflict of interest. As Chair Howard was saying, we and whoever else will serve as like general counsel or other outside counsel, we're advisors to the board. We're not judges for the board, right? The board has to be self-governing in this respect. So we're happy to advise on legal interpretation. And in fact, we included the paragraph 2 about providing feedback to the trustee. Now that's not legal advice because we don't represent the individual trustees, but we're happy to tell you the way that we interpret the information and the provisions. But ultimately, it's a board decision. So that's the concept for if a trustee believes that they have a conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest. Alternatively, if a trustee is seeking clarity that they do not have a conflict of interest and are fine to act, they can still consult with the counsel. They still submit the information to the executive committee, but they say, I don't think this is a conflict of interest. They certify it in good faith that that's not a conflict of interest. In that circumstance, again, the executive committee, unless they determine that there's no chance that there's a conflict of interest, then they pass it along to the board with the certification saying that they don't think it's a conflict of interest. And that gives them, and then again, that would be acted on by the board at the beginning of the next meeting before the action item is taken up. So that again gives the opportunity for the trustee to get essentially a majority vote of the board saying you don't have a conflict. You've had the opportunity to consult with counsel to the board. The executive committee has had the opportunity to consult with counsel to the board. So what we're trying to establish here is a process that does protect the trustee from later accusations of having improperly acted.
And let me make sure I ask a clarifying question, and then again, please chime in, Peter. The board is the only group that can excuse you one way or the other.
Correct.
So the legal counsel can excuse you. It has to be a board vote. The board is who decides it. So in this situation, it goes both ways. Because we may have people who don't want to vote on something because you have the legal obligation to vote.
Correct.
So this could go somebody trying to get out of voting. So they still have to be recused from voting because they have a conflict that's been established. Just like you may want to be excused because you do have one. So, I mean, this goes both ways, but the board is the one that has to go on the record. So if you remember Peter and Frank at the DOT board, you had to ask to be recused and the board voted on it. It was usually formality, but the board gave their members the reason or the coverage not to vote. That's not something the general counsel legally can do. So why you wanted to chime in?
So just clarifying, and I shared the information from the Rules Review Commission in terms of just, simple, recusal. Is it, so if I, and I guess this sort of goes back to confidential information or things like that, that if and I know we'll get into that part of the discussion, but ultimately, even if I say I think I have a conflict, the facts still have to go in front of the board for a vote. I just clarifying that there's not a time when I say, yeah, I'm conflicted here, and I just, just volunteering it.
Sure,
So-
James, go chime in.
So as the process that we've laid out right now, the trustee who thinks that they have a conflict of interest would be able to, when they submit information to the executive committee, they would be able to say, what is proprietary information and not submit that. So basically, the trustee chooses how much information to submit to the executive committee and then give a certification as to the existence of other proprietary or confidential information that they're not able to provide. And on the basis of both the information that they did provide and what they are not able to provide, taken as a whole, they in good faith believe they have a conflict of interest. So we did build in on that side the opportunity to, it's the trustee's obligation and opportunity to decide what information should be shared with the executive committee and what won't. And I'll also note that right before this meeting, so this is not reflected in the version that you have here, but we got a recommendation from the city attorney that we can build in here that all of the information that is submitted includes, so not just the information that's withheld, but the actual information that's submitted to the executive committee can and should also be marked as confidential. So we'll reflect that as well.
Right.
So then going to that, and that's helpful. So effectively going
Wait
once
a minute, Brad, I see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with what James said. I believe, the principle that we want to think about here too is that the board actions come through the board. And unless the board delegates its power or authority to an individual or to a committee, all the actions come from the board. And so that principle is at play here. Unless it's delegated, then those decisions are required to be made by the board.
Why still had the floor? And then
Okay,
we'll
and
go to
so just to clarify, and again, I'm maybe reset. So effectively, what I heard you say, James, was that all of the information that is provided to the executive committee could be potentially, protected or marked as confidential. Then the information that the full board would act on would just be the executive committee has reviewed information that is confidential and believes they're, tell me how that process goes if it's, because once it's said in a board meeting, it's very public, right?
I'm not exactly sure that, in fact, let's clarify something real quick. Executive committee is a public meeting as well. So we would go into closed session can we not go into closed session?
So,
Wait a minute, everybody. Wait, I want to make sure.
yeah, so closed session has a pretty specific list of things that you are permitted to go into closed session about. One of those things is to protect the attorney-client privilege. And so we would need to look at it to see if this rises to that level. But I don't think there's a specific closed session that would apply.
So let's go a step back then. The step before that would have been being able to talk to the attorney. That is a one-on-one.
That's one correct.
So that is not necessarily anything they talk about at EC. Is it confidential? I guess the attorneys would have to, if it's in court, somebody can make them say what they saw.
Well, remember too, is that, and I think Adam made this point, was that when those board members are speaking to the general counsel, they are not, their personal, liability is still on their own, right? Because it's counsel to the board. But the general counsel will advise that, individual on whether or not the circumstances would merit further review or would be, perceived as a conflict and that sort of thing.
Reverend Mack, and then I want to do a quick commercial, and then Peter, I have you next.
We'll talk a little bit about process that Brad just started with. So if someone believes they may have a conflict and they have a conversation with the attorney representing the board, not the individual. My belief is that we need to have a process, which is speak to the attorney then gives recommendations. if in fact they're being told that there's a possibility that there is a conflict of interest, I think something should be written in, put in writing to the chair or to the executive committee of leadership. And then you make a determination as to how much will be coming to the floor to the rest of that.
That's what we're still talking about.
Yeah,
I will tell you this, guys, since our last meeting, it has become painfully aware to me, and I'm gonna say this on Wednesday, that we act as, we are essentially a local government body.
right.
So we have the same responsibilities of the elected official. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, whether we like it or not, some of it, I think, Wyatt, to your point, the only way to deal with, and even this meeting, I want to remind you, this meeting is going to be on the website. So it's just real clear. I mean, people are watching what we're doing. I mean, what you say, I don't know if we can promise a lot of things because it's kind of a public process. So, I mean, I think what you talk to the attorney about, you should be very smart about. Because they still could be compelled to say what they saw and heard. I mean, we just need to know that I don't know if there's a lot of ways, just like being an elected official, you can get out of some of these things. It's just the way it works. So, Wyatt, to your point, you can consult with the attorney. This attorney still reports to the board. Should be careful what Adam came on camera. Adam, you want to chime in on something?
Yeah, sure. Sorry I can't be there in person. I picked up COVID, so you don't want me to be there. But I just want to point out that when the executive committee determines that there's a conflict of interest, this is at the top of page 5 of 10 of the red line. It says each reported conflict of interest or appearance of conflict of interest shall be summarily reported to the board, right? So it's like a quick report of, so-and-so has a conflict, so-and-so has a conflict. And then it says with public information related thereto is available on request, and the existence of proprietary information available on request, right? So if a trustee has questions about the conflict that they don't understand, like they can ask to see the sort of material that was provided to the executive committee, but when it comes to the proprietary material, all that they're going to be told is that, well, the trustee reported that this information was proprietary and couldn't be shared, and that's one of the bases that the member thought that they had a conflict, right? So I think this goes to Wyatt's question that there's not necessarily like at the full board meeting, a detailed discussion of each individual conflict. It's a summary report where the members can get additional information if they want. They can learn that whether there was or was not proprietary information, and then they would make the decision to recuse on all of those conflicts as a group based on that information.
Okay.
I'm getting to know this group. Chrissy want to throw up her hand so bad.
Chrissy.
Peter's next.
No, go ahead, Christie. Christie, go ahead. Christie, go ahead.
I just want a clarification from me. Something I just heard in a meeting is once the bylaws are passed, the executive committee is, everybody's going to see what the executive committee talks about. So there is no,
there's no private.
there's no private discussion. So to Wyatt's
It's only with this.
question,
It's only with this.
yeah, there's no way to keep your information private other than what you discuss with the attorney. And then that seems kind of like,
It's with me
Maybe.
because they can be compelled to tell because they work for us and not for them.
That's correct.
So if we were sued, that's what I'm saying. They could be, Frank, I'm playing lawyer right now. They could be compelled, Brad, to say what they heard because it's a public process. So that's why I'm setting the level. We are very much a public body.
but so Wyatt, I just want to make sure Wyatt hears what's being said. Wyatt, you'll not be able to talk about this in any level of confidence.
But I'll tell you even more what Kristen just heard from me before then. The 4 officers who have been talking, as soon as we become an executive committee, we no longer can talk because it's 4 of us. Anytime the 4 of us talk, we have to have a public meeting. That's what she's saying. So, so it's even
Really?
us.
The sunshine one, that's true.
So, all right, Peter was, it's a quorum because it's 7. And it's
Of the
for us.
executive committee.
Peter,
Yeah, I think maybe my suggestion is just simple. I'm just thinking about, it seems like you got a lot of process here on what is basically a inquiry by a trustee to say, do I have a conflict? Here are the circumstances. Do I have a conflict? It seems like, just if you'll humor me a second, just if you toss that to the attorney first and they make a recommendation to the executive committee, isn't that more streamlined than having the executive committee take it up and make a recommendation? It just seems like you have the attorney there. Why not utilize him for that recommendation? You're still going to vote on it. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you're still going to bring it to the board and say, we need to recuse Wyatt Dixon because he's got a, conflict on the, Hambright light rail stop. So you're still going to bring it to the board. It just seems like to me, it's more process for the committee to deal with it first. Whereas if the council says to the committee, my recommendation is there's no conflict here, it seems like that would be a more streamlined process.
well, I think, and I'm gonna keep playing attorney since I'm having fun with it. I don't think we're saying anything different. I think we're saying the same thing, is that you can go to the attorney at any time. You don't have to send it to the executive committee, and it probably, I guess you're saying, can it start with the attorney?
Yeah.
I think it can start with the attorney, and the attorney may tell you that's clear, move on. I think if it's unclear, then she may recommend you go through to the next step.
Right.
And the next step is the rest of what we talked about. Am I saying anything different, Adam or James?
No, I think that you're right. I just want to be very clear. I think we've said this a couple of times, but Peter, that initial conversation between a trustee and counsel to the board would not be protected by the attorney-client privilege. Right, so anything, clearly that conversation would have to include the information on which the attorney would make a recommendation as to whether there is a conflict or not. And once you've communicated that, right, then it can't be protected by the attorney-client privilege. So
he didn't have to share with the executive committee, but he could be compelled by an attorney or by the board to share it, though.
Correct.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that clarification. I anticipated that, and I got that. And I think if we just write this kind of in plain speak, and the trustee goes to our council, and the council says, hey, the executive committee needs to hear this. I think you do have potentially a conflict. Then it goes to the executive committee. If the council says, I don't think you have a conflict, then I assume you just keep going and vote on the matter. Is that?
You go to the board, so Frank.
Yeah, again.
So you still have to go. So you still have to go to the board. In other words, even if the council says I don't think you have a conflict, you still have to go to the board.
No, I'm with you, and I'm gonna do this in support. I'm sorry, because Anthony had his hand up just in order. It'll be Anthony, Reverend Mac, and then Frank. So Anthony, what you got?
But could you answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter. I thought you were done. I'm good.
No, I'm trying to ask the question just for clarification here, because if a trustee goes to our legal counsel and the legal counsel says, I don't think you have a conflict, does that trustee still need to go to the next board meeting and say, look, I went to the council and I presented these facts and they said I don't have an attorney, or does it just end there?
Yeah, why don't we get the attorneys and then Anthony, Reverend Mac, and then Frank.
So,
No, and the attorneys. He wants to answer to his question.
Yeah, Peter,
I'd like
your question.
to hear the attorney's answer to that, if I could, please.
Yeah, to answer your question, the answer is no, the trustee does not have to go to the full board. The trustee may choose to go to the full board to get the board to affirmatively vote that there is not a conflict of interest.
Okay.
But no, there's no compulsion for the trustee to do that. I just want to be very clear, though, that if it turns out that there later, is some accusation of a conflict of interest or appearance of conflict, right, then the fact that you talk to counsel to the board is helpful, of course, right? But that's a
Right.
good act for the trustee, but it's not determinative, right? No counsel to the board is serving as a judge, right?
Right. The counsel to the board is just giving us their opinion. And so I
Correct.
think I got it. I think I got that. And then David made a comment when he was answering another question that, I think what he said, there's, as you said, a lot of discussion here, is that to abstain, we have to get consent of the board to abstain. Is that correct also?
That's correct. It's recusal. Yes.
So the board actually votes on recusal?
That
In
seems,
DOT, Peter, you remember you had to turn in a recusal form at the beginning of every meeting to DOT. They did a motion to approve all of the recusals at one time.
Yeah, no,
So-
well, when I was on DOT, David, we didn't do that. We just said, I have a potential conflict on item 8.1B and asked to be excluded from this vote. So y'all probably put that in process later on. And I see what you're saying. In other words, it would be, you would submit that and it would just be handled by one vote on here are all the
Yes.
items, here are all the cases that this individual is
Yes.
recused on. I think I got it now.
And wait a minute, Wyatt, I got it wrong. So Anthony,
Yeah, I'm getting to where I think Peter just landed, but Wyatt's question earlier was, if I raise my hand and say, I believe I have a conflict of interest, I wish to be recused.
Yeah.
What requirement are we imposing that request be somehow validated through support? What statute?
actually, it's in the bylaws.
No.
In the state of North Carolina, you cannot sidestep a law. You can't. You can't. So I'm gonna let the attorney chime in.
I don't understand what you're telling me though. So you're telling me that I can't say that I wish to be recused on this matter and that be the end of it?
No. Actually, Adam and James, who want to Brad?
Please refer me to the statute on that.
The-
You want to answer?
Well, so let me say this. I thought that our rules of procedure set out the idea that if you weren't excused from voting, your vote counted as a yes.
We got rid of that because we said you don't have the ability to create an affirmative vote for someone who's
That's it.
not present.
If you're excused,
That's recusal.
If you weren't excused, and you didn't vote, your vote was counted as a
let's
yes.
start with the statute that says that you have to vote when you're on the body.
Yes, but that's different than saying I wish to be recused and the body, what verification does the body have to carry out in order to grant my request for recusal is what my question is. And I'm not aware of any statute that compels that to happen. Now, the attorneys can help me with that, but I've been on a number of public bodies and that happens without any verification, which is what
Yeah.
Peter just said. And that's what they were doing on NCDOT. That's what I've done on other public bodies.
Rules
On city
Review
council.
Commission.
council.
Rules Review Commission is 100% without, like, we're not voting on someone recusing at all. And if there is any entity or commission inside of the state that's going to be particular about following the rule, it's going to be the Rules Review Commission.
No
So the statute, right? And so because if you walk this forward, you say scenarios like trustee person X says, I think I have a conflict. I need to be recused. I need to recuse myself from this. And then they're denied that ability. Then they're forced to vote on something, which then in turn causes someone else in the public to raise a question and say, it looks like you did something for your own benefit. And that person says, well, I tried to recuse myself. I was told I couldn't, so I had to vote. That's a tornado to me.
Well, all I can do is tell you that I lived this one. And I was told, and that's why I'm asking attorneys as a city council member, and I'm saying we're treated the same way, is that I could not, because I mean, what's to stop you from getting out of a controversial vote because you just don't want to be in it? So
If
what
you
I'm
don't have a
telling
con-
you,
if you don't
your
have a
refusal,
conflict,
your refusal has to be legitimized for you to be excused. You can't say, I don't want to vote on the stadium because it's controversial. You can't just take yourself out if you have no reason. You can't abstain, you can't recuse. I
right?
mean, you
I
have
agree
to
with
have
that.
a reason to not vote when you're on a body and your job is to vote. So I'm
Yeah.
asking to find that because I know I practiced that myself for the whole time I was on council.
Yeah.
You can't just willy-nilly say, you know what, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and I don't want to vote today. You're compelled to vote when you're on a body unless you have a reason not to. So I'm asking the attorneys to find that because that's what I'm saying.
That's fine.
You just cannot do that. I mean, if not, we'd all say, you know what, the red line going to so-and-so is controversial. I'm not voting on that. I recuse myself. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, I don't debate you on that point, that your refusal has to be legitimate. I'm not debating that.
That's what I'm saying. What do you say?
My question is, what is the process for determining that
Oh, I
legitimacy?
understand that part.
And whether or not the board has that duty by statute or otherwise.
Whenever I was on council, I was recused, the body had to recuse me from the
We're
vote.
not on council.
Yeah.
No, we are saying the exact same way.
We're a unit of government, but we're not elected.
We have the exact same responsibilities.
Thank you.
Mr. Terry,
All right, let me calm all that down.
I'm
So
so relaxed. Just remember.
actually, you are Reverend Max, so yes, ma'am.
So much.
Well, Anthony, did you finish?
Yeah, I do have questions.
Okay, so I want to go back to the specifics of how this conversation started, which is
Thank you.
recusal around a specific conflict of interest, right? Not just voting no. We need to have a written process, 4 paragraphs at most, in the handbook, so everyone understands what the process is. Very clearly defining that the council is not our individual councils, but in fact, the council for the board. Explaining that there will not be full confidentiality if you go to your council. The next step of the council determines that there may be a conflict of interest. And what that next step would be, I suggest that they go to the executive officers. The executive officers will then determine that this in fact is a conflict of interest because only the governing body can make this determination, not the council. If in fact there is one, we come to the executive.
You're saying council, you're saying executive committee.
I'm saying council like our lawyers, when I say council.
Okay, well, you said, well, okay.
Attorneys, I'm saying general counsel, I'm saying general counsel. Now, that decision, if it is J, would come to the full body. And the full body is the only governing body that has the determination on whether or not you be accused or not. It's not necessary for us to have the full issue unless it's something that's really egregious or a concern that would directly affect the body. But I think that we're getting far, off from what it is. It's real simple.
But the question, Reverend Mac, was if any member of the trustees asked why, we have to explain it. There's nothing to stop us from explaining. That's where we got off. We got off on this idea that if any individual member of the 27 said, well, explain why David can't vote on that, we have to say something.
I get that, but I think that we need to go back to the entire body to remind folks that this is a public entity and everything that we say is online. Everyone will hear and know. I'm sure that everyone in this room understands that our responsibility is first to represent the city and the county, but we're also here to make sure that we're covering the MPTA, right? From any legal ramifications.
Yes,
We need to be clear about our responsibilities.
But Adam, one thing to remember is, and Adam said this, that report, so it comes to the full MPTA, is not a word for word documentation of all conversations and determinations that were, evaluations made. It's a summary.
Right.
And I think that summary is the key there, right? The summary is a brief summary that there has been a determination made. It's not, a verbatim minutes of whatever consultations went on.
No, it's not. It would be a summary, but I think the point where we got off is that if somebody wanted to ask more questions, they have the right to know before they raise their hand, before they voted yes or no.
And then that door is open. That's just what it is.
And that's where we're being reminded. So I got Frank next.
I think what I was gonna ask has been covered.
And Wyatt, you were next.
Okay, my question really goes back to again, going back to this, the having this process to be affirmatively recused. David, I get 100% what you were saying regarding, I don't want to vote because it's controversial. But somehow the Rules Review Commission, which is loaded with attorneys, and it reviews every, every rule in the state at some point. There's no like, yes, we've given you permission. The chair recognizes a certain member and says, yeah, okay, we understand you have a conflict and or therefore recused. That's the end of the discussion. It sounds like it operates like Peter was describing the DOT board previously.
I think why what happens is after a while it becomes a functionary and people just nod and people keep going. It may be more practice. I think at some point somebody must have said, "Do we vote on it?"
We don't know. We don't vote. I'm positive we don't vote.
No, I'm just saying. I think somebody's getting functionary with it, and it just kind of happens.
Okay.
I can tell you, city council, because I had a conflict every year about a budget. Every year I went through this process of asking for it. It became nobody questions it. I think what we're talking about is a worst case scenario where somebody questions it. Most of these bodies don't question it. They just say, yeah, because it could be either one of us at any time. And they're trusting that the attorney's already done it. And what we're all saying is that we're probably going to get to that point, but I want us to be open that if somebody asks you a question, it could go left. So that's all. We're talking about the worst case scenario right now. I think it'll be for functionary too. I think we're all trusted. You talk to the attorney, yeah, we did, okay, move to approve and move on. But it could. And Adam's not in your head. So Adam, you came on camera, you gonna say something?
No, I agree. I think that's right. I think once we get going, it'll be perfunctory. And I think we saw this with the bylaws too, that all of these things are harder because we haven't worked together and don't have the experience of like navigating particular conflicts. So, we wanted to have the process that could be efficient, but then also with the new section about a determination that the person doesn't have a conflict, give an option for somebody to like get comfort that, that they could be accused later that they ran it by the full board. Like that's really the goal here, is to have it sort of be efficient and get to a quick resolution of an individual conflict issue, keep a method for a member who has confidentiality concerns to just say in good faith that, that they have confidential information they can't share right now, but I'm submitting I would have a conflict. And, the fact that they relied on confidential information would come to the full board, but they wouldn't be forced to share that information because they wouldn't have disclosed it to anyone.
So let's try to make sure we all get on the same page on at least one thing. And Matt, Paul, you actually did this at the last meeting. You didn't want to suggest the process. So let's agree that, do we have an agreement that trying to materialize a conflict is too hard to do for every member? So we should not try to quantify indirect materially. If we're all agreed on that, then what we're really talking about is making this process something we can all recommend. So are we all in agreement that trying to materially say what a conflict is beyond what we should do? Because again, in all these other bodies, nobody's tried to do it except for Utah, who tried. Any disagreement on that? Okay. So all we're really talking about is process and making it what we all want it to be. And Adam and James, I'm gonna oversimplify it, and you tell me because I want everybody to kind of agree. First thing that happens is if you think you have a conflict or not, and you want clarity, is you go to the general counsel, or maybe even the CEO. I think any way you can get some understanding, somebody on the team to give you some clarity. All right. The next thing you do is that if there's determined, and even the CEO would probably defer to the attorney now to think about it. So the attorney would make a determination, and if it is a conflict, They recommend you take it to the body. Are you compelled to tell the body about it if they decide not to? I think that's no.
And absent some sort of subpoena or litigation or something like that, but no, not in ordinary.
So it now becomes your decision whether or not you go forward or not if they tell you you have a conflict. Because you may decide not to do anything with it.
Wait a minute. The attorney, I call them general counsel, the attorneys do have an obligation to tell us if it's something that actually.
If they actually go through with the vote, yeah, potentially. But right now, we hadn't voted on anything. This is just them asking for an opinion. The opinion does not compel the member to go any further than that. Because they could change the deal. They could decide not to buy the land. So things can change. Right? I'm doing scenarios.
I mean, we're doing scenarios. I'm just simply saying that the attorneys for the board. And so if someone comes to you and say, I have a conflict, this is the conflict that I have, and they know the conflict is something that may potentially harm the board, they are compelled to tell us.
Well, we're talking through the process. That's why I'm taking us through a process.
Yeah, but just on the point, but what I don't want to do is put something in place that makes people not want to bring something up to get their opinion. So if I come and say I have this issue and the initial indication is it's a problem, I would hope that member could then say, well, you know what, I won't proceed. I won't submit it.
That's
in which case it would be that, and the other implication of this conversation is for anybody who's in a business that relies on, stages of confidentiality you put a deal together. This is something you really need to know because, the challenge, if you're probably trying to put a real estate deal together or a company or whatever, there's a point where if there's a point before which you're not in a position to talk about it publicly. And so that's a situation that I think that's the genesis of a lot of the questions we're getting from our colleagues is, can I do business and be on this board? I mean, ultimately, that's the question. Nobody's put it that way, but that's what I'm saying.
And I am saying that it is not the onus. I'm trying to take responsibility off the attorney to say they're counsel. You're the member. If you got conflict, you need to tell us, not the attorney.
Right.
Because I want to make sure we understand what our role in this is. They're not to carry water for us. It's your job to tell us. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's what you get help responsible for. So, yes, Anthony.
So that takes me back to my question, which is, I talked to them. They said, you might need to do something here. I say, okay, I raised my hand. I would like to be recused on this matter. What responsibility does the board then have to validate the legitimacy of my request to be recused?
So we actually doing two different things. So recusal is already in here. What's the steps on recusal the way it was written? Because we actually wrote recusal last time.
It only deals with after the conflict's been determined.
I thought that was conflict.
Right, recusal on the basis of a conflict.
Yes.
So what's the steps? So once somebody says I need to be recused, and that step is written in the bylaws is.
Well, did they say to be executive? You're hypothetical?
No, I'm not hypothetical. What's written?
So that's the exact process that we're talking about. They say, I need to be recused because I have a conflict. They say it to the executive committee. The executive committee, unless they have said that there is clearly not a conflict, they submit it to the board for the board to vote on it at the beginning of the next meeting.
Yeah, so somebody has to quantify that you have. Emily,
I just think he means if it happens during the meeting.
Well, it could happen at any
Not
point.
before.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but you're right. That is one of the instances, right? The matter comes up and it's something that you want to be recused from. But the point is that we should determine whether or not the board has a duty to verify the legitimacy of a requested recusal, right? Based on a conflict. That's the process you're talking about right now, right?
and I'm saying yes. So,
And if you say they do,
but that's just David. So how do we get a question? I think I'm asking the attorneys to run it.
Yeah.
That's not spend a lot more energy on.
I agree with that.
So I think the way I've understood my role, and I've done this a long time, planning commission included, you have to have a reason and you have to be recused by the body. So somebody will run that down, council policy or otherwise, please tell us what's the procedure.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Duty.
The rules of procedure.
Under Rule 18, you have a duty
But that unity to vote is based on,
Well, what I would say is that there is a statute that relates to city council members and I think county commissioners as well, 168-75. What I would say is I am not 100% clear as to whether that particular statute applies to this.
what's it?
That's the statute that says that a member is not excused from voting unless they have a conflict of interest as determined by the board.
So when you say that,
What we need to figure out is whether the MPTA, which is a new creature statute under the PAVE Act, is subject to 168-75, and it might be a challenge to come up with a definitive answer one way or the other.
I'd actually make an argument, to be honest with you, beyond that, and we talked about this with the conflict of interest, is that the MPTA may need to be more strict in the city council, but we don't need to be more lax in the city council. Because we're going to be judged by the public the exact same way, whether we like it or not. So, I mean, in this situation, we would be lowering the floor on ourselves if we said that we don't have to vote. But I do want to make sure legally, we run that down, please. Who's chiming in?
It was me. Sorry, David. I just.
Who is me?
I'm sorry, Wyatt. I
Okay.
apologize. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, this is really, and again, I can't necessarily think of what our goal here is to protect the public and be fiduciaries and make sure there's no lying, cheating, and stealing in a simplistic way, right? I mean, that's the goal of all this, right? And if we sort of take a step back and think of that as the goal, some of these steps about verifying verifying what, I need 26 other people, the board to say that, yeah, we think Wyatt Dixon has a conflict and we agree. And then it just seems such a slippery slope as opposed to being able to just say, here's a conflict. I mean, otherwise what you'll have is potentially, someone who's, not even in real estate development, their investment, and they want to go, they're under contract to buy a building near something that they're near a transit line, right? And it just, having the best foot forward from a public perspective is paramount. And it feels like that we're getting sucked into conversations about things that are counter to just moving the ball forward. I'm doing a terrible job of articulating this, and I apologize. But I guess my question in a simplistic way would be to Adam would be, if you look at the question about the other statute that y'all were talking about, if the process that the state rules review commission, again, it's one data point, I realize, is there a reason that something like that wouldn't work well for us as a body? And because if we're trying to protect the public, the best thing in the world is to make sure that we're doing this cleanly, because we also want to have, like we have now, we want to have qualified folks on this authority for years to come, right? And so I don't know. This just, it seems like we're getting wrapped around the axle, I guess, is really.
No, this is an important one because it needs to be clear. I'll give you a scenario, right? There was a stadium deal that was controversial, and some people didn't want to be on the record because they were running for office, which we don't have that problem here. But we do want to be real pointed, some of us. And they just, I don't want to be able to vote, and their vote was the decided vote. If you don't think the media is not going to dig into this very rule that we're talking about to figure out if you could recuse yourself, you're kidding yourself. Because when it's unanimous, it's easy. When it's one vote, then they're going to dig into why it have the right to do it. Why did they let him recuse himself? Why did he vote? That's when this plays into that. That's when this becomes a problem. So, I mean, again, let's move on from this one. The attorneys are going to go find statute or not, backdate it up or not. As you can tell, I feel pretty strong about this one because I've had people kind of weasel out of votes, and it's not fair to the ones that raise their hand. So you need to have a reason not to vote.
But Mr. Chair, remember, this is not about someone just simply not wanting to vote. This is about recusal, which is very different.
But if they declare they have a recusal and it's not quantified, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, which is why you have to have a process. You go to the attorney, you go to the executive committee, determination is made, and if need be, you come to the body.
Oh, I think what I thought Anthony was saying is who gets to justify a recusal. And I'm saying that with the attorneys are going to run that down for us. So the last word is, let's see what else we got.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking whether or not there's actually a duty to do that. And that's my question is, can the board simply, if I raise my hand and say, I've got a conflict of interest on this matter, I'm requesting to be recused. Does the board actually have a duty to verify my request for recusal? You can vote on it. You should vote on it. The board should say, fine, we vote Anthony's recused on this matter, right? You agree to do that. I'm not saying take the vote out from the board. I'm just asking, what is the board's duty to verify the legitimacy of my request?
And I'm asking.
So there's two different questions.
I'm asking the attorney to run down that part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think if we think about.
Wait a minute. Matt actually, he hadn't said anything, so we're going to let that come.
No, I just said, I think we'd be accused of negligence if we're to vote on recusal and not like consider facts and circumstances, right? Like, that's by virtue of our duty to the public. We should be, actually weighing whether there appears to be a conflict. But what I'm here not to jump around too much. I feel like we're talking about two different things. One, the process for determination of a conflict, a verified one, to recusal, and another, there's a duty to vote that may be codified in the state statute. But perhaps that's just a loophole that we need to revisit in our governing docs, where unless recused, there's no violation.
And that's what they've been telling us all.
They already said.
She said that. It already said that. It already said that. Yeah, so what we voted on says you have to be real. I think the only thing they're actually pushing on is, well, who's, if I want to recuse, stops me. So.
If I request to be recused, body votes, and they vote, I cannot be recused, that I must vote. Then if you play it forward, I'm accused of a conflict of interest. But I had to vote.
But you covered by a vote.
You covered.
You covered 100% by the fact that we voted.
Where does it say?
Well, I mean, we're voting. I mean, what you can do is say I was compelled to vote because they said I didn't have a conflict.
The moment the body votes to force you to vote,
Then I'm protected.
then you're protected. Because we made the determination, not you. You did your part.
Remember, the body makes the determinations and excuses. Nobody else does.
It seems to me, David, it seems to me that we might be looking at this backwards, because the real issue for us will be you voted on something and you should have recused yourself, right? That's really the crux of this.
But it's still back on you, remember? It's still back on the member to tell us that you think you should. That's what we're saying. That's why I kept saying it's not the attorney, it's not me, it's the member who needs to say, you know what, something happened, I didn't know. Remember the whole thing, why when you know, you report. It's when you become knowledgeable of it that you need to make us aware.
Right.
Practically speaking, I have never, ever seen someone asked to be recused and not been recused, or that there was some kind of detailed, in-depth inquiry into that.
Nobody has.
Because it does occur during meetings. And I understand that. I think that the point though is being recused is not sort of a way to actually abstain from vote for convenience.
Right.
It's what's really being said, I think, in your rules of procedures, clearly saying you can't, for convenience or because it's uncomfortable to take that vote, decide not to.
And I don't want to let you all off the hook. I mean, somebody, and Peter, you said this, if somebody wants to make hay of it on this body, they absolutely can. I mean, it's a public body. And so, I mean, I don't even want to pretend, again, that scenario where you're to decide and vote because you recuse, absolutely, you could get a lot, but that's what we signed up for. So let's move on. And
David,
then,
let I apologize. One more thing. Let me just and I think I forwarded this, but I think it's worthy for everyone to hear for a second. So I asked the counsel for the Rules Review Commission to give me the ethics reminder that starts at the beginning of each meeting. And it's something the chair reads before any other business is taken at that time. And it says, pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 138A-15, commissioners have a duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of any conflict of interest. If a commissioner knows of a conflict of interest he or she has or appears to have with respect to any matters coming before the commission today, please make us aware of it. If a commissioner elects to recuse themselves from considering any matter on our agenda, the commissioner must provide a written statement for our records noting the recusal. Staff will follow up with you after the meeting for that purpose. And so it does do a little bit about what you're talking about. You just can't say, well, I'm just recusing because I just feel like it. I don't want to vote on this. But that to me is the commissioner elects, then they don't vote, and then they provide a written statement if it hadn't been already done prior to. And that seems really simple.
I think the difference there, Wyatt, what you're saying is that their staff is still verifying it. They're just doing it after. They're still getting explanation. And I don't know if I care about, again, we're talking process. So, I mean, but what happens in that situation is that if you recuse yourself and you shouldn't have, the board possibly has to revisit a vote that they took that day at the next meeting.
And that might be a better way. That might be a better way to do it. Really, if you sit there and think about it, it's like, okay, if you mention it and then it comes. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting wrapped up.
We're still talking process. I mean, I think the best case scenario is that when you get your agenda and you see it, you start this process with the attorneys, and maybe we solve it before you get to the meeting. In the scenario you're talking about, when you get to the meeting and you do it there, yeah, you do it, but we may have to revisit the vote if you didn't really have a reason to be recused. So, all right, so next step is, do we just let the attorneys come back? It's trying to do this next week. I don't know if it sounds like we're gonna get there. If we had a whiteboard, I guess we do. We could talk through steps if you guys, because we do have another, we're here to 4, so I'm not rushing you. 3:30, what time are we here? 3:30. No, on my calendar it's over here. It's a 2.
Your calendar's wrong, sir.
It says 2:30.
Yeah, it's.
It's not 2 o'clock yet.
No, I thought it said.
It says 2:30.
Okay, well, I'm leaving it too.
Yeah, she needs it too.
I'm meeting with Marcus at 2.
So I think I'm saying, should we trust that? I'm trying to get us somewhere. Can the attorneys draft some of what we talked about? Let's give them some thoughts on process and see if they can bring us back something. And it looks like we're not going to get this on the 11th. Maybe we get it on the 26th. And I didn't want to have another meeting, but it sounds like we may unless we go through this.
So question, Mr. Chairman, I think they're making 2 approaches. One is to think about writing the process into the code of ethics or to reference a process that can be written as a process.
We could
reference like an handbook.
But we could reference that we have a process of this.
Yes.
But just know we're putting on the actual process as a separate document.
Correct.
The policy.
I think that's best.
So all right, so we could get a code of ethics in there. So if we actually refer to the policy in this document, and I'm hearing people nodding their heads, I'm nodding, Frank, and all right, so we refer to a process in conflict of interest, and then we develop a process.
Yes.
And we get it to the operations committee, so we got
policies to get done.
We got a lot of policies to get done. This is not even close to them.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
All right, so what else do we have outside of this part of this policy we want to talk about today?
Actually, that's one.
Yes, go for it.
One clarifying question on enforcement. So not thinking of anybody on the committee today, but if someone were to be acting in bad faith and failed to disclose a conflict and after the fact, someone would file a complaint pursuant to the enforcement and the misconduct sections. Is that how that will work?
Well, it depends on if you're talking strictly about a conflict of interest or about something that does constitute misconduct.
Okay.
Misconduct under the policy really talks about violation of certain statutes. So it's possible that you could be talking about misconduct that would have implications beyond just the violation of the conflict of interest policy.
Yeah.
And therefore would have its own, associated remedies and issues like that.
Okay.
But if it's just a conflict of interest policy, right, if you're just saying there should have been, you should have recused and board members become aware of that, there could be a censure, but that's essentially the maximum thing that the board could do. Right? There is no approval, removal, right, for the board to remove members. So.
They didn't appoint you.
Right, exactly. So essentially, it's just a censure process
I see.
to publicly go on record to say we disapprove of that person's conduct.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What section were you referring to? I think.
I was looking at misconduct in enforcement, 5.6 and 5.7, just wondering how failure to disclose, what's it,
I suppose the body could also, as a practical matter, choose to revoke again. Right? Not that it would be required, but you could the body believe that had they known this information, suppose they could choose to vote again.
Yeah.
And you have been quiet the whole time, my friend. Do you have anything outside of what we talked about to add to the conversation about the policy in front of us?
No, I have nothing to add.
Let's go around the room. So what we're doing is beyond the fact that we need to develop a policy around, I don't know how to say what we did, but around that. Christy, anything for us?
Yeah.
Frank?
Can't think of another thing that hasn't been said.
Matt, good. Reverend Matt.
I'm good at this point.
Going to the rest of you guys, non-committee members. So, Anthony?
No, I'm good. I think we're supposed
Peter?
Good.
Wyatt?
Thank you for hearing me. I'm good.
Justin? Justin, Harlow, are you there?
Just drilling.
Wyatt's no taker. I'm joking. All right.
Gonna make a motion.
That's where I'm going. That's exactly what I'm trying to get to. So I think what I heard is that we are okay with the conflict of interest, the code of ethics and conflict of interest policy as presented by the attorneys, with the caveat that we are going to only reference a process for recusals and potential conflicts of interest, and refer that and ask the board to make that a future policy conversation to be had.
That's the motion.
Please.
Okay, so I think this is the board acknowledges and agrees with the code of conduct as proposed. And subject to, or in addition to that, we want to have a written policy on a written process with respect to conflicts of interest that are identified.
So this has some changes in this document, and that will be reflected in the current document.
Exactly. Yes. So I also move.
Second.
Any questions from anybody, not members or non-members? Yes, Andy.
Can I just ask the attorney, what other circumstance would a member be recused other than a conflict of interest?
State law required recusal, but I can't think of a state law right now that would, and I want to leave that open as a possibility.
That's a good question.
It seems to me that the only purpose or reason for recusal is in the case of conflict.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's correct.
So I think it kind of narrows down what we have to deal with.
That's the question. That's a really good question.
I think we only have to deal with recusals as a result of conflicts of interest.
It may change the status, like if you become an elected official, that will.
You have to resign.
Yeah, you can't be on the board
You have to resign.
Yeah. That's what you mean.
which is the distinction between us and the city and the county is that you cannot be an elected official.
Right.
So.
If I tell you the pain that I've gone through to understand.
Hey, bro, I'm not trying to
surprise you. So anybody else? Anybody on the phone? I got you, Frank. I'm coming. All right, all in favor, let
We
it
need
know.
a
by-
second.
I got a second, bro. I got a second. All in favor, let it know, be saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. All right. We got policy director here. Hey, I didn't intend on taking this to the body on Friday. Is everybody okay if we deal with this on Friday, the conflict bylaws and this? Elizabeth, if I did that on Friday. Okay, Elizabeth, never mind. We'll do it.
I push this.
Put a packet out.
Okay. We'll do it next Wednesday. All right, thank you, everybody.
Those are the largest ones.
We're adjourned. No.